Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the final and, to me, one of the most exciting parts. I'm sure you've been highly entertained from a lot of tutorials, but one of the things that I wanted to do was actually change up our normal tutorial breakdown that can be a little bit overloading. So one of the things that I wanted to share with you guys is some of the things that happen at our larger events, and that's like sitting back and just being able to chat with the artist about what's going on in the world of, our industry, what's going on, unique problems, worst projects, all those different things to really be able to help us move forward by learning from the different experiences of the people within our community. So for that, I put together a pretty intense panel here, and please give a warm welcome to each of our presenters as they come to the stage. I'm going to start off all the way from St. Louis, Mitch Myers. Mitch, to the stage. So you guys can just grab a seat, get comfortable. And Chicago local, so a lot of the other folks, we have some locals. Chris Schmidt to the stage from Rocket Lasso. Chris is actually going to be at a number of these, mostly in Europe, but he's going to be closing it out with me. So he helped put together a lot of the breakdowns and things like that, longtime member of the community. I also have Emma Gutierrez. Emma, I think I met you when you were a student at Half Res, and now she is a professional at Crate and Barrel using cinema and doing a number of different things. So I wanted to bring somebody up. We have a whole lineup of people from all the different walks. So we have Jake and Duarte from Swarovski. So some more Chicago locals, some amazing studio folks. And last but definitely not least, join me at the last couple cities, is Chad Ashley from Grayscale Gorilla. So welcome them to the stage. Chad, I'm going to pass this off, or Jake, I'm going to pass this off to you, and I'm going to switch over my mic.
Okay, for sure.
Hey, everybody.
All right. So I guess you guys can still hear me. So yeah, I'm just going to start asking questions. So these are some more industry generalized questions, and I do have some images and stuff to be able to pull up. But one of them, if you guys submitted different things to me, one of the questions that I want to start off with was, does anyone have like a favorite project that they submitted that they've worked on to date that they wanted to talk about or share that is uploaded, or even a still? Anyone?
Favorite projects?
Favorite project that they uploaded?
One of the worst projects?
One of the favorites. Duarte has one of the favorites.
Here you go, Duarte.
Yeah. So let me see. Let me go ahead and pull that up for you.
All right.
So let me see.
I think it's the only video I have up there.
It's the only video you have. Let's see if it's the only one I didn't download. This one here?
Yeah.
Video
exactly.
-1. Let's check it out. That's pretty.
Nice.
Yeah. Thank you.
So what'd you like about that? So what was
Oh man, so when I got into motion graphics, it was mostly because I liked experimenting with all these different mediums, and this is a perfect example where we got to mix all of these things like illustration, we mixed 3D, compositing, music, live action. We shot the book on the Phantom, and then just went to town and added all these elements to it. But most of all, it's just conceptually, it was very relevant. It's based on all of these ideas that are on your sketchbook that come to life, and that's kind of what you do using the iMac Pro. And yeah, so it was a cool one. I mean, there's several projects that definitely marked me, like definitely the first Marvel project, Captain America: Winter Soldier was like a big deal. But this
for
is
me too.
this
as
is one
a nerd
of the.
for me too. Yeah, that's
this
a really
is definitely like.
I loved it.
Yeah, bringing Bucky back.
So
wow.
it was a tough. But as I was way more involved in this one, I thought it was more relevant to show it, and it's a little bit more recent. So.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, the mixed medium.
The
So the
school-
book was actually, so this was a real book, and then everything else was just composite?
Yeah, exactly. And actually, we had a flame artist who cleaned up some of the drawings on the book, so we could put the drawings that we wanted there, because it was really hard to control which pages we would land on. It was just the book basically exploded open. So, yeah.
Super cool.
So yeah, it was fun. The shoot was really fun, and it's just school is I think was the first time I used Arnold as well. So it was a cool one. And yeah, and there's my slide 1 actually shows the original style frame that sold the concept to Apple. So this was all done in Photoshop, and then we had to figure out how to make it come to life.
We had to reverse engineer.
Yes. I was like, yeah, I'll take an image of a book. I'll clean out the words. I'll put some illustrations.
What have I done?
Exactly.
Are you sure you want this one? Start backpedaling. Yeah.
Yeah, right.
So that was fun. Anyway.
Awesome. Well, let me
Good
jump
memories.
into. I know we have a lot of different things, but one of the things I wanted to talk about was, for anybody, has there been a time? Did everybody here start in 2D? Or Chris, I think you started at 3D, right? You're the only one that started in 3D. You just started in 3D. Everybody else was started in 2D, right?
2D.
So was there a unique problem that you saw solved for the people who started in 2D that when you went into 3D that you were able to solve, where 2D it was just a complete pain when you were doing that? For anybody in our 2D panel, was it like you had that moment where you're like, oh my goodness, this is so much easier?
Well, I started in OG 2D, like traditional animation 2D. Like I didn't even like 3D. I thought 3D sucked when I was in school. And it kind of did back then. So I was very much allergic to it. And to me, it just felt cold and not really organic and real, and it bothered me. But then I hit the real world out of college, and I couldn't get a job doing traditional animation. So I suddenly fell in love with 3D. And I learned how to do it, and I fell in love with it. And I think the main thing was, for me, the hang up for me was always that it just felt cold and it didn't feel human. And when I finally started to learn a little bit more about 3D and get into it and really focus in on materials and lighting and rendering, I found that it can be warm and human and look real and be something of an extension of my own sensibilities in terms of like photography and filmmaking, all my other passions. So it was a natural progression for me, and yeah, I love it now.
Hi. So for me, yeah, I started out with 2D drawing characters. I'm a big character fan here. So crossing over to 3D was super duper hard because it's almost using a different part of your brain. And so whenever I was creating characters, I would sketch them out. And then when I was starting even with ZBrush and then bringing it over into different renderers, I was like, wow, I can't do this. And they always looked fake. They always looked stupid until I got a lot better. And so I think that was my best little welcoming into 3D was my characters look stupid. I need to get better. And so then I got welcomed into 3D community a lot more. So
it was making that shift, but it was your personal designs that really did it to you, bringing those to life.
Yeah, definitely.
Awesome. This is one for everybody on the panel, and this is one for, I think, really the audience, and that is, well, let me take a poll of the audience real quick. How many here work freelance? Okay, so we got a good amount. Everybody else, studios? How many are you guys full-time studio folks? Okay, a couple. Any hobbyists? Just people just checking it out? Oh, okay, a little bit of both. So, okay, a little bit heavy on the freelance side. And with that, we have, you guys all have pretty much experience. Chad, I know you guys have studio experience. We have some studio, we have some freelance, we have some educators. So what do you guys think is the biggest challenge facing the industry as a whole? When you take a look at the world of motion graphics and 3D and content creation, what do you guys feel is the biggest challenge that we're facing today in the industry?
Yeah. No, I think as technology improves, and I think we're all aware of this, like as things become simpler and more accessible, I mean, we've seen technology make it easier to produce a good-looking image faster every single time. But the problem is, I think, is it's forcing all of us to spread ourselves a little thin, because we all have to sort of cover multiple bases now that things are a lot more accessible. So, you know, if you do 2D and 3D, or if you are able to produce like something photorealistic but also something stylized, or animate a character, animate something like that, I think as technology has sort of democratized everything in our industry and made it, like I said, more accessible, it is a challenge, because there's a lot of pressure to no longer be a specialist, especially in the motion graphics world. I mean, it's different in other industries and visual effects and things like that, but when you're in our industry specifically, there's a lot of sort of it's easier to sort of do that sort of, what is it, like a T shape, you know, where you're like, you spread yourself out really, really wide and maybe have like one little specialty, you know, that goes deep. But that's probably the hardest thing, is there's just so much rapidly advancing technology that you have to keep up, but you also have to make sure that your skill set hits a wide enough breadth that it seems accessible and interesting to studios, especially for freelance and things like that.
Anyone else?
I have another one. I don't know if it's the biggest, but one huge one. I feel like it's the fact that the deliverables for every project kind of tripled for us. We have now, maybe more, you have now 16:9 deliverables, you have square deliverables, you have 9:16 deliverables, so vertical formats, you have all kinds of stuff. You sometimes have print that they want out of your product, and with that, I mean, the budgets haven't really taken that into account, and neither have the deadlines. So it's
So
you end up
output formats.
Yeah, exactly. All of these, not only formats, but just composition changes that are changing the way we have to think about design in general, where we're not so much thinking about one specific composition, but we're thinking about a system, like a graphic system that can be adapted, and creating assets that can be translated into all these different formats and quickly adapted. So
do you find yourself re-rendering and recomposing certain shots?
A lot of times. We try to be smart about it. Sometimes when we know these deliverables are going to happen, we tend to maybe work on a square or even shoot on a square, because when it involves live action, it's even more dangerous, because you don't want to have a whole other shoot when they decide, okay, we want a 9:16 now, and we shot everything cropped, you know? So, it is an interesting thing, and I feel like it's affected us, especially over the last year, violently. So, yeah.
That's wild.
Anyway.
Anything at the end, Mitch? You got something?
Speaking as a freelancer and seeing how much freelancers affect our industry, I think just the way freelancers run their businesses and grow their businesses is going to affect the future of our industry quite a bit. There's a lot of freelancers going into this industry without having any agency experience or anything like that, really, which I think it's important to get that agency experience first, because you get the workflows down, you understand how the processes work and things like that, which helps you run a more efficient business when you go into freelance. You need to know how to deal with net 30s, a bunch of different contracts. I mean, there's so much crap. So yeah, being a freelancer that is able to run his business, or her business, incredibly smart and efficient to be able to take more jobs, not go out of business, things like that, is only going to help our industry grow.
It's huge. I think you can keep the mic right there, because I want to ask this one to Chris, because you're an educator, and I've learned so much from you over the years in this, and I think that's one of the things is, what do you feel is one of the biggest or the most critical things creatives can be doing now to kind of tool up for the future as they're...
I mean, I tackle everything from a very technical side. I'm probably the least artistic person in this room. So I didn't bring any slides whatsoever. But
Wait, you have one.
It's just my contact one. And you'll see, I do 3D, but it's a 2D image that I put in.
There it is. There it is.
Yeah.
Chris Schmidt, folks, Chris Schmidt.
But it really goes to, it's actually something I've been really fascinated lately, watching people and I'm still trying to wrap my mind around it, were some of the most amazing artists that some people have gotten like really famous in the industry. They almost don't know what they're doing. They just play around and they make incredible things, but they don't understand the buttons they're pushing, and they still get incredible things out of it. But I do feel like it's really important to don't just click the button. Understand why you're clicking the button. Understand the ramifications of it and how it ties in with the rest of the program. You're going to waste so much time if it's like, well, it works, just get it out the door. Even if you have to get that deadline, then okay, fine. Go back again and be like, wait, why did that work? So I understand next time that I go and tackle that I can apply that technique in a new way. Otherwise, you're starting completely from scratch every single time, just clicking buttons until suddenly some combination sort of works. And the client comes back with a single change, everything breaks, and you don't understand the fundamentals, how it went together. And 3D, even Cinema 4D being the most user-friendly of all the major 3D applications, there's still a lot of buttons, a lot of combinations. There's like, I've been using this software for 19 years now, and I feel like I don't know half the buttons that are in it. And yeah, that just understanding why. Yeah, but you know, like I said, it's been incredible. Yeah, it's incredible what some people put together just tinkering around and having no idea what that button did.
Definitely. Well, let's pass the microphone to Emma, because I wanted to see Emma, because you just left school, got hired. What were some of the critical things that they wanted to know about you, or what you knew in getting hired at a large company?
Well, for me, the minute I got not really out of school. I was in my senior year, and then Chris Dedeen, he's over at Flashpoint. He said, hey, I have a friend, Joe Siegenthaler. He needs a 3D generalist over at Space House to do architectural modeling. And so I took that job. I did it part-time. What they really wanted from me was to see if I can do architectural modeling, if I can do hard surface and things like that. And I showed that I had a very wide range of skills. And so I left there simply because it was part-time. The company wasn't growing. I mean, they were great people. It's just I wasn't growing. So I went over to Crate and Barrel just because it's still architectural design and interior design. So I just was like, okay, let's go over there. So once I got over there, very same thing. They want to make sure you have the smarts to look at something and be like, okay, I can design it that way and I can do it this way. So with that, at Crate and Barrel, I'm mostly just rendering and lighting. But other than that, at home is where I do a lot of my passion work. But especially getting right out of college, it's super duper hard. It's really hard to get a job because you don't have that much experience, and you have to really prove yourself that you can take on new things without causing the company a delay.
Right, so the technical skill set, they were very precise on.
Very
You
precise.
have to be doing that.
Yeah.
Really cool. Anyone else have what, as far as creatives could be doing, or the biggest things that they should be doing? Because you guys work at studios, Jake, Duarte. What do you guys see when you're hiring folks, or when you have somebody new onto the team? What are you trying to see that they have? Because I think Chris mentioned you can get a really nice image really quick. What is it that you're trying to extract from?
Absolutely,
Yeah,
and both of these are true. We usually just really look for raw talent and not being afraid of opening the software. I think that's a huge step. A lot of people
just open it and you're good. You're hiring. Hold on. What, exactly. You guys hear that, folks?
Not being afraid of opening and diving into it. Yeah, because a lot of people really don't have experience, but if they're motivated enough to open it and learn, and I think that as projects come by, we are set up in the studio to sort of mentor new people and show them new things, and as they have free time, they can go online and watch tutorials. And for me, like, I think it's much more about the positive attitude and just dependability, people being there. It is about just the excitement and passion, and you can kind of feel that within the first 2 weeks.
Wow.
I think specific techniques, or it's maybe they're not doing cinema right away, and maybe they'll get into it as they need it. But yeah, that's kind of how cinema is, to be honest, not a huge percentage of the work that we do. It's about maybe, I would say, 20 to 30. You agree? Yeah, so it is, you know, we bring somebody generalist, and then we bring somebody a generalist that has, you know, the inclination to and openness to start exploring 3D as well. So
that's awesome. Anybody else want to add anything?
Oh, well, I mean, I would just piggyback off Dort's answer and just say that personality is like a big thing that someone as a creative entering the industry could just focus on. Is that, you know, being able to work on a team and having that talent is really important, but being able to like just vibe with a group and being able to work together with people is probably something that we look for a lot when, you know, freelancers come in or when people are applying and things like that. And so there's definitely like a soft skill set that's important to focus on in addition to sort of like technical stuff.
yeah,
Awesome.
organization.
Organization, yeah. I'm sorry, I forgot this one too.
Keep going,
Yeah,
keep going. And
exactly.
this. And this is the most important.
Yeah,
And then this.
Wash your hair. Yeah, just kidding.
So
or not, it has come out.
So that's something that brings me
can't say
to
that.
like these events by themselves. I mean, I think a lot of you, how many of you have ended up working with somebody that you met at an event or a social function? Is that
Oh my God, all the time.
okay?
All the time.
Okay, so these things are, I'm like being in the community and actually participating in this, you can see right now they're saying all the time. This is like, you guys are the ones here. I'm sure some of you might have friends that you might have talked to or anything else that didn't make it out. They just missed the chance to connect with everybody here that they don't know. So connecting online can only get you so far, and you might really like someone's work, but when you get to meet them in person, usually within a conversation or two, somebody's gonna know like, oh, you know what, I can work with you on this. And so in the back of their head, instead of just seeing someone online and having that guesswork, that's gonna get pulled out of there. They're like, oh, you know what, I saw this person at this show and they were doing this thing, I can call them. And that relationship building is kind of essential, especially for a lot of us who work remotely and we just sit and, you know, create in our little vacuum. But really it's the studios and working with other freelancers and people in the business can really amplify yourself. So I just wanna, you know, give you guys props for coming out here again, because this is where you can network like never before. Like how many times do you see this many artists in one room? It's like,
Do you mind if I
yeah. Yeah, go for it, Chris. What do you got on the community?
Yeah. So a lot of you, I recognize your faces, but if you're not familiar, Chicago's got a really amazing motion graphics community in general, where there's meetups literally every month. There's, if you like Cinema 4D, if you're getting into it, then we have Chicago C4D that meets every other first Wednesday of the month. And then opposite that is Chicago Motion Artist Group. And that's just a hang out, go get drinks and network. And the sheer amount of people who have met each other and how this group has grown and how many jobs are gotten. Like somebody will leave a studio and begin their own company. And then they recommend someone from the group to go work at that company. Students come in and get internships from meeting people at those meetups, and it's just grown. And everybody, like people jump companies, all the freelancers tend to know each other in Chicago. It's a very friendly area, so that's all been great. And if you don't already know, it's probably already been shouted out, but Half-Res is happening next Wednesday. So I think everyone in this room, you'll probably see them again there at that event. We're gonna have over 300 people, so make sure you come and hang out there.
Yeah, if you can get to it, this is the first year I'm gonna miss it. I think since inception.
I think
this is
ever.
terrible. Yeah, so I'm gonna be on the road, but if you guys are you guys sold out?
No, we got room.
Oh.
But we do over 300 people already.
There's room. So yeah, you got. That's where I actually met Emma. So that's where I met Emma. Events like this, like, make it. It's not just another industry event. I mean, what we did here is a lot of tutorials and breakdowns, but that chance for networking, it's invaluable. So yeah, definitely check out Half-Res if you can. I'm gonna miss you guys. Yeah. All right. So before I get emotional, let me jump into the next question here, and that is, what effect do you guys feel Cinema 4D has had on the industry as a whole? Because 3D has been around for a long time. I went to school and I tried a different 3D application, and then I ended up getting my degree in economics because I found it so much more easy and much more user-friendly than the interface of another unnamed 3D application. But what do you guys feel like the effect has been? And I guess we can start off with the newcomer.
No, the reason why I was really excited to answer this one is simply because me being fresh out of college, we do have a Houdini class. And the first day I got in there, I was absolutely confused. I looked at my friend that was sitting like right next to me. I said, I hate this. And that was the first thing I said. And that turned me off actually from motion graphics at first. That really scared me because I didn't like the way you have to work it with the nodes and everything. So I was like, oh God, I'm going to hate this class. And surprising, yes, I did. Until I met Cinema 4D. Then Cinema 4D slowly kind of made me feel a little less intimidated and more comfortable when working with motion graphics. I was like, okay, this feels a lot better. This isn't scary, and I don't have to hate it. And so now I do love it because now I get to make really, really cool things instead of having to worry about Houdini.
I'm sorry, I'm not hating on Houdini.
You're gonna name names? Okay. I mean, I still like Houdini.
Okay, can I hate on Houdini too? For a second?
It's not a bash fest. What do you think your cinema has done to the industry?
No. I started with After Effects, and I loved Particular, and I loved particles, and so I thought, Houdini particles, that's the next step. I need to get into that. This was a while back. And
it's not what you don't like about other programs. Let me restate the question, because
there is a bright side.
It was what effect do you feel that Cinema 4D has had on the industry?
So after spending 2 years in that steep learning curve, I was getting somewhere, but one day I opened Cinema 4D and tried it and realized how easy it is to do anything that I was trying to do in Houdini, and and there you go, never again. It went dark.
So I think, piggybacking off of yours a little bit, accessibility. With the new pricing model, there's going to be a ton more people that are going to be entering this industry just for the sheer fact that they can afford to jump in and play around a little bit easier, which is going to make you as a freelancer or anybody entering the industry, it's going to make it even more important that you set yourselves apart, and especially with how you market yourself as an artist and whatever you're specializing in. I consider myself a specialist. I only open Cinema 4D basically every day, and then After Effects every once in a while. So just setting yourself apart and making yourself a brand and an image that you can shop to people and create a lasting effect is going to help your name stand out greater than the random kid that decided to get Cinema 4D because it was $40 a month and now he's trying to get jobs and stuff. And what are you going to do if you're going up against just like a generalist or something like that that can probably get the job done? I mean, like you gotta polish yourself a little bit,
Wash that hair. Yeah. Always keep the hair washed.
I'll say that Cinema 4D is a gateway drug.
That's a good way. Yeah.
And it gets you in, and it's like, oh, everything's warm over here. Come on in here, and then you're like, oh, okay, I'll check it out, and then pretty soon, like, you're hooked. But what's great is that you can sort of go as deep as you want. You don't have to go super deep, and you can go as deep as Chris Schmidt, and that's pretty damn deep. But through it and giving artists this ability to jump into software that may be intimidating or just an industry that might be intimidating is great. And I think that that's what it's done. It's democratized 3D and made it accessible. And then from there, if you want to go further and learn Houdini, I am not bashing Houdini, or Substance Designer or anything else, it becomes a lot easier because you've got that foundation. So.
Yeah, I think the one thing that always differentiated cinema for me online was that communal aspect. I've hopped around between a lot of different 3D software that I will not bash here, but it's interesting because a lot of them don't necessarily have that same kind of communal push behind them, and there's just less resources online, or there's less sort of collective mindset of sharing what you know and things like that. And that was really important for me when I was starting out, because it was really easy for me using Cinema to be like, oh, well, there's resources on this and resources on that. And if you're using another program like Maya or Houdini or whatever, for a long time there was just a lack of resources in the same sort of realm or achieving the same sort of looks that you might be interested in and things like that. So I always really enjoyed that Cinema 4D was less like a just a piece of software, and sort of encouraged people to get together and share what they know and things like that. And I just felt like there was a different culture around it as a program that I think other companies are trying to sort of adapt to and get people to have that sort of communal culture. But Cinema 4D always seemed like it was sort of the tip of the spear in terms of that kind of engagement with its users.
Thank you. That's my job.
Yeah.
I gotta actually be engaged
Yes.
with people. So that's awesome. So in that, has there been any trends? So it's like accessibility, it seems like a big thing. Or Chris, did you have anything you wanted to add or on that? Or
I mean, I never used any other piece of software.
Okay.
I skipped over Photoshop and went straight into Cinema 4D, in
Wow,
fact, even in
okay.
school. But one thing I've heard multiple people say, to one degree or another, that there's all the different 3D packages all over the place. But once you start using Cinema 4D, you can actually finish the jobs, get them out the door, and actually make money. For everything else, you need a team of people. You got to bring in a specialist. All the time when we're showing off cinema, somebody comes up from a different piece of software, and we're like, "Oh, let me show you MoGraph," and you throw a couple of cloners, a couple of effectors, and like, oh, I would have needed a programmer for 2 weeks to build this, and it's like we just built it in 5 minutes in front of them. So yeah, it's easy to blow people away in the software, or in other ones they'd be completely lost. So
yeah, I've ran into some of those. I feel bad for people who spent 9 days when it's like 5 minutes and then they have something and I'm like, sorry, I wish I could have found you sooner. But which takes me to the question, and that's has there been any trends that you guys have seen in the industry that you've liked in the last couple years? Like, oh, there's this trend. Somebody brought up like gradients, how gradients are coming back, or is there a trend that you're seeing creatively that you're really liking at this moment? No. No's an appropriate response too. Like, I hate everything.
I think I'm seeing a resurgence in actually tasteful design, and I think that's a welcome change, I think, and I'm seeing as more designers find their way into 3D, you start to see a different perspective in 3D. You start to see things that are a bit more tasteful, a bit more subtle, a bit more restraint, and I appreciate that. My aesthetic aligns with that kind of stuff. So, yeah, I think what I'm really enjoying is seeing a bunch of people that may not have gotten into 3D 3 or 4 years ago with a great design sensibility now learning 3D, and that really inspires me.
So you're mostly referring to Beeple's newest stuff, right? It's really, really classy, minimal. Yeah. Okay.
Only 1,000 objects. Yeah.
Anyone else seeing any trends that you like?
I mean, I don't. This is not really a stylistic trend, but I got to talk about Instagram and everydays and all of these things that people are putting out, like cranking out beautiful frames every day and learning new techniques. I think it's kind of changing things a little bit, because usually you would only learn new tools by being assigned a project where you need that tool, and by forcing yourself to do something every day, you're going to use new tools anyway. So I think that's kind of cool, and I 100% agree with Chad, where I feel like in the past few years, designs have been becoming more and more simplified to an extremely minimal kind of thing. I feel like a lot of the fault of that is TV shows are just cutting to cards for main titles, and they're not really doing anything longer than 5 to 10 seconds, because, or I think 6 seconds is when the skip intro comes, so they want to get that shorter than that. So I don't know if it is going to change that, but I do believe that strong design and more beautiful and complex design is coming back. I hope. So it's cool.
Anything at the end? Anybody else want to add to it? No? All right. So this will take me back into, so from the creative back to the technical side, and that is, do you have anything that you feel that the industry really needs to advance and move forward? Like some of the limitations that we ran up to until this point in time, what feedback would you give to like creative companies? You know, we have a lot of creative companies, Unreal, you know, Maxon's on board, Dell, Adobe, you know, all the folks that are on board. What feedback would you guys give as creatives to the companies to say this is what would help the industry a lot? Besides, you know, doing more of these things.
It's not really, well, I guess it's technical, but it's not really technical. I was going to say, like, in the industry, especially among like the companies, it's always good to like continue this push for diversity in industry. I think is a really good thing, both culturally at the companies and just like in the industry in general. There's been a lot of efforts from places like Maxon and Unreal and Autodesk where they're broadening the user base and bringing in people that don't necessarily fit like the stereotype of the 3D user. And I think it's kind of cool to see that industrial sort of backing for diversity. So I always feel like that's kind of a trend that I would like to give feedback to the industry and say, keep doing it, you know, keep going. I think this is just, it's just a net positive for everybody in the industry. I don't necessarily think that's a technical answer, but I feel like that's what I like. That's cool. Yeah, keep it up.
So it leads to more users, which leads to more feedback. So
right.
I could see some technical benefit from that. Anybody else as far as feedback to the faster? I heard faster, Mitch, you mentioned everything faster.
Yeah, I just don't want my computer to blow up.
Can I do a quick one? This is just me because I don't dive too deep into cinema and 3D and just UV mapping. Would there be a better way? Can we talk about that? It is so hard. I wish there was yeah.
I second that. But yeah, actually when we were in Montreal, I got some really interesting feedback from artists there. And one of the things that they were saying is that as fast as computers are getting and as fast as renderers are getting, the deliverables, as you said as well, are getting bigger. We're having to deliver for screens that are 20,000 pixels by 80,000 pixels, or we have to deliver an experience that's 60 frames a second. So now you're doing like twice as much work. So I think what we're seeing is a little bit of that Moore's Law effect, whereas as computers get faster, the demand for more quality images and bigger images is going to also increase. So I think what we need is easier, faster ways to tackle these immense projects. And I think as everybody comes into this industry with more technical experience, you're going to be able to handle more technical jobs than I was when I was first coming in, because you've already gotten experience in programming through your high school maybe or something like that. So I think what we're going to see is we're going to need the software to help us deliver these ridiculously huge format projects on time and on budget.
Awesome.
Oh, and I think a good trend towards that is probably like some of the feedback is to just keep pushing towards like real-time technology. Like I feel like that's sort of a thing that's going to enable us to do those like huge projects. So like I know Redshift and all these like engines like Unreal and Unity are getting Cinema 4D integration, and I feel like that's the kind of technology that's going to like lower the bar, you know, to make sure that you can get like those bajillion pixel images, you know, and those kinds of things without having to wait on, you know, your renderer to sit for, you know, 48, 72 hours to finish an image. So, yeah. Are we fielding questions? We have a question.
Oh, we'll have a moment to be able to take questions in a minute. So
For sure.
One of the things I want to jump into, and that's you know, we talked about technology of just like some of the desired things, but where do you guys, you know, a little bit of future forecasting here. Where do you see as far as like future technology? I know some of you have been at SIGGRAPH or NAB, and you've seen like emerging tech, or you've seen something online that like that's really cool, and in the future, X, Y, Z. I was with Robin Haddow in Toronto, and she just had her first VR experience when we were over at Noseman Space, and she was like, I think I might be changing careers. So what is it that you see as far as you know, the next 5, 10 years? What do you see that's out there, or future forecasting?
Machine learning is going to be huge, and it's one of those things I'm super fascinated by, the whole machine learning and AI topics in general. But on a very straightforward, practical level, there's a lot of almost like semantic stuff coming out, or even super basic things where it's like you can I think not too far in the future, you're gonna be able to pipe in a picture of a mountain range, draw a spline, and then get a photorealistic 3D mountain range. At that point, you're just going to be art directing from like style frames or from photos. And so there's always going to be a place for, every level there's going to be a place for an artist, but I think the low threshold to entry is going to be, it's going to be so low to create beautiful things. Already, every daily render's quality has like quadrupled in quality in like the last year or two because everybody's using third-party renders. Everybody's automatically getting photorealistic stuff right out of the box, where a couple of years ago you had to fight really hard to get that, and the machine learning is just going to be completely transforming all of that. And you can always watch the tech demos of like automatically cutting people out from backgrounds or generating geometry or feeding a 2D image in, and it'll find a brand new one to replace it in the scene. And as far as generating geometry, replacing things, it's going to get exponentially crazier, and who knows how fast that might go.
A lot of deep fake technology and whatnot.
Oh, those are fun.
Anybody else as far as future casting
or? So I think VR is like a cool idea. I've started doing some modeling in VR. I don't think it's necessarily practical enough for commercial work at this point, at least for me, but the immersion is really cool, especially when sculpting, being able to be like in that world and zoom all the way in, zoom all the way out, just really feel like you're sculpting something. VR is really good for that. I enjoy that. But yeah, and the real-time stuff obviously is going to be like super huge, and that's only going to get even crazier.
So I got machine learning, you said sculpting in VR, so that's kind of the more tactile, actually getting some feedback, feel.
Yeah, I think in a more practical sense, maybe not quite as far off. I think that we're not going to have our own computers anymore. You're going to be renting computer time on a terminal. You'll have a monitor at home, and then you'll probably buy or rent a machine that matches what you need virtually. So I think you're going to see that. I think rendering is going to become trivial with real-time engines or maybe AI. So yeah, I think it's going to be a very interesting future for all of us. I love you, computer overlords.
So the next question would be for starting off. So that's, we looked at some future forecasting and things like that. I want to take it back to, just starting off. And what helped you get to where you are in the industry now, and what advice would you give to somebody starting off? And I would like to hear from everybody, because everybody's in kind of different places in this. Yeah, I guess, Emma, you're a good place to start, because you just started off. The person right behind you who's graduating, how would you advise them getting into the industry?
I would say definitely listen to the people around you, especially the people who are already in this industry. Don't be ignorant to it. Always listen to them, because without criticism, without anyone telling you, hey, maybe you should do it this way, is a huge, tremendous help. Because, for example, I know somebody that was very ignorant and wouldn't listen to anybody's advice. They wouldn't listen. They wouldn't try anything new. If you said, that looks like crap, you really need to fix that, he would say no, and then he would just keep doing what he's doing, and he would just look blankly in you in the eye saying no. So yeah, just definitely take advice, and don't be afraid of criticism. That's all I have to say, really, because then everything else is on you, because it's really all on you. You have to work really hard to better yourself.
Yeah, definitely to piggyback off of that. Like I've occasionally will post things online. I'll create a 3D animation of a character and post it somewhere and ask for feedback, and people will give feedback, and then I'll do another pass and repost it, and the forum will be shocked that it's like somebody asked for advice and actually took it and went back and did it. It's so rare. I mean, so that gets nuts. But I mean, there's so many resources for learning and starting out, and I was never. I took a very strange career path, this is a bad crowd to tell this to, but go out, network, meet people. That's where there's always that they don't tell you that part in school, where it's like, if you don't know someone at a company, you're not going to get a job. The more friends you have in the industry, the more chances you have to get a job, the more chances to get a new client. In Chicago especially, a lot of people will get really busy and pass a client on to someone else, and jump studios, like I said. So getting out, networking, shaking hands, just being cool. I remember that was Nick Campbell was giving that advice a lot in the beginning, which is like, hey man, just be cool. Just go out, be cool, and that's going to get you a really long way.
So when I first started out, my situation was different because I was already graduated from high school. I went off and did my own thing for a while that had nothing to do with 3D stuff. So when I came back, I didn't have a degree or anything like that when I decided that I wanted to do this. The most important thing for me starting out was taking any internship that I could possibly find. And you guys have a lot better than I did living in Chicago, because St. Louis's scene is dead. Like there's agencies, but basically just me making stuff for Monsanto and stuff, it sucks. And that's why my first job was at the St. Louis Rams. Like, that was nothing else. Like, that was it. So knowing that your career path is not going to be a straight line, and being okay with that, and being open to the type of, or any type of possibilities or opportunities that come your way. And if it feels right in your gut, and you take it, because it could lead you on a totally different path than you felt you were going to be on before, and you could be, living the life.
Okay, yeah, that's so true. I just taking the opportunities. I think for me, it was a lot about initiative first, and then opportunities, and just kind of looking at each project that you take on, and as small as the project is, trying to see the potential of making it as amazing as you can make it, and sexy. I think that the client and your employer will feel that. And second, I honestly think being just respectful to all your peers and everybody around you in the studio, because those are probably the people who are going to give your name to another person, and then another opportunity opens. And it is, in my career, was made of opportunities. It was, I took one step, took that opportunity, and then another one opened up, and another one opened up, and it's been like that. And I'm eternally grateful to each of those people, because looking back, I know that if I didn't have that one conversation with that one person, that job would not have happened, and I probably wouldn't be here today. Or, you know what I mean? So yes, being mindful of, they say don't burn bridges. I guess it's kind of the cliche, but it is so true. And keep in touch with people, get yourself out there, meet more people in the community, because it is true that if you make friends, and if your reputation is pristine, those friends will pass on work to you because they trust you. So, yeah.
Awesome. I want to bring to the stage one more local artist. It was so dark that I missed him. Ladies and gentlemen, Sean Frangella. Woo! Sorry about that, brother. I was like, how did I miss you? There wasn't a chair. Let's get Sean the mic, and I would love for you to answer that as far as what helped you get to where you are in the industry now, and what advice you would have to somebody.
Okay, well, make sure there's a chair for you if you go to a presentation.
First off,
real quick,
tap me on the shoulder.
I know.
Should have just came up here. I would have just had you up.
I don't know if that's the modern equivalent of like the giving a presentation in your underwear stress stream of like, you show up for the presentation and you're sitting down.
That underwear's worse.
Yeah, I don't know.
I know.
At least you're up there. What I learned that got me in the door when I was starting out of just like in like early 2000s and trying to like market yourself is early time of like the internet is getting your work out there, getting a reel or graphics or stills up on a website, or if it's a reel, you could put it on Vimeo, YouTube, and there's so many more platforms these days. Print business cards, print stickers, go to events, talk about yourself. Don't be scared to email. Companies, people ask people whose tutorials you watch what they think of your work, get your name out there, because really one of those avenues will be what eventually gets you in the door at a studio or a freelance thing. So just, don't be afraid of shameless self-promotion and putting your work out there, talking to people and having your work. There's nothing worse when, you're at an event and someone seems interesting and you ask for their card or like where their work is, and if there's nowhere to go from that, it's kind of hard to have a jumping off point, but just have your work out there, and if you ever had a presentation, there's no chair, speak up.
Well, I think, Sean, you can answer this one as well, because you do a lot of client work, and then we can kind of work our way back. Yeah, now you're getting double. Right. You get double the work.
Me time.
So, yeah, there's a lot of Sean time, and that is misconceptions. When you're working with clients, are there any common misconceptions that you have all the time that you have to clear up with the client before going into a project or halfway through?
Yeah, I think the biggest part of like doing client work is understanding that you are hired as the specialist. They don't know how to do what you do. They don't know the checkpoints. There's some education along the way. So as excited as you might be to like dive into Cinema 4D and show them what you're doing, you got to still do the like process along the way of like have a conversation, show drawings, show storyboards. And if you're looking to freelance eventually, that was some of the biggest stuff I learned having full-time jobs at ad agencies. It's not so much about the like shiny end result that you show up on the screen. While that stuff's cool at the end of it, you got to understand what the process is of like storyboards, rough cuts, checkpoints. So you're getting buy-in along the way, especially if you're doing freelance work, because you got to take a look at those hours and watch how those hours are burning and kind of figure out like, did I just agree to like a $10,000 project for $200 because I didn't check those boxes along the way?
Anybody else on misconceptions that you're always clearing up with clients? That they have something stuck in their head and you're like, oh, no, that's not how it works at all.
All right, you could keep it.
That'd be funny. I believe Sean has an answer now.
No, I think most misconceptions on our end are based off of the client not really having an idea of what it takes to create a certain reference that they sent us in terms of amount of time and the budget, and then it is our job to kind of give them solutions of how they can achieve something without sacrificing their creative too much. How can you tell that story? How can you get that message across without spending the money that you don't have? So, yeah.
Yeah, that's where the real talent comes in, is when you're able to make something pretty on budget and on the timeline, and everyone's happy about it too. Like it's kind of the perfect project. It doesn't happen often. I mean, there's always going to be like issues in between little situations and things like that. But as far as misconceptions, I hear a lot that freelancers don't talk to their clients about when they're going to get paid and how they're going to get paid, and it becomes a huge mess for both parties. Because I mean, if you're expecting to be paid, 15 days after a project's done, and your client has a net 30, you have no idea about, you're probably going to have to be scrounging out of savings to pay some bills, and that's not the great way to run a business. You're going to be in the red real quick and then finding another agency job. But yeah, I mean, just be open to your client as if they're just like another person, another friend that you're talking about business to, and be professional. But it can also be a relaxed situation when you're talking about money. It doesn't have to be something that anybody needs to be afraid of, because they're hiring you. They know you're going to get paid, hopefully. I mean, hopefully they're going to pay you. So they should be expecting to lose that money. So once you get paid, you get paid. Just make sure that that everyone's on the up and up about how that's going to happen.
I think it's really interesting. I'm going to kind of jump off of what you were just saying. And in any other industry, money is not a taboo subject. Like, you're going to have somebody come into your house and fix your sink. You're going to pay the plumber whatever his rate is, right? You're going to exchange money for his services. And I always talk to creatives that are so afraid to like breach that subject and like, oh, is it okay if I get paid this much? And it's like, it breaks my heart, because what we're doing, in my opinion, is far more valuable then, well, let me rephrase that. Plumbing is pretty valuable. Without it, I wouldn't be able to scratch that, reverse it. But you know what I'm saying. Like, we are equally as important to their business as well as making their toilets run. So you should not be afraid to breach that subject and get paid what you're worth. And yeah, that's something that everybody, including myself, we should get better at.
Does anyone have a first win, like a first project that you've done that when you hit that, you're like, I'm a professional now? Like, so
I'm still waiting for mine. Someday, man. Anybody got a job out there?
Nobody had that aha moment where it's like, when you felt accomplished enough to continue on in the industry.
I don't know. I guess I'll say that I had sort of an opposite experience, and it was just like a slow, gradual rise where you start working on things that you're like, oh, this is really cool. This is starting to get more, you know, like this is a very prominent project that I'm really proud of, or whatever it is. But it's kind of like, not like you're oblivious to it, but sometimes when you just continue to work on projects and it's like when you grow taller and you don't notice that you are, and everybody's like, oh, how tall are you now? Look at you. You know, it's like kind of one of those things where it's like, look what you're working on these days. Hey, good job. You know, and you kind of don't look around and you know, yeah, you're a big boy now. Yeah, and you're like, well, I guess I am a big boy. You know, yeah, it's like, all right. But yeah, that's kind of how it was for me, where I wasn't necessarily aware of it at the time, or I didn't necessarily have that like #1 win. It was kind of like stair steps in my career path. So
yeah.
I think Mitch said something at the end he was going to add.
Yeah, no, I totally see that, because it's been like small wins, like it's been kind of gradual and little victories, but if I had to call one out, it was the first big Marvel project. That was pretty sick. It was like working at that level and knowing that, you know, a few weeks from then, 300 million people were going to be looking at your work. It was pretty. It put things into perspective a little bit more. So it's just kind of cool for me and the studio in general. So.
I don't necessarily have a project yet that I felt put me up another level, I guess. A lot of my projects that I feel, I guess, passionate about or I enjoy have been my personal projects. Probably because I don't work on them as long, and by the time I'm done with a commercial project for an agency or something, I'm kind of burnt out on it already. I mean, yeah. I think it's okay to be the type of person who does have a little bit of, what do you call it? Imposter syndrome, you know? Where you don't necessarily feel like you should be in this industry sometimes, or you don't feel like you're up to par with like what you're even getting paid. That sucks. That's a shitty feeling to have. Getting over those humps in your career is a hard thing to do, but when you come out on the other side of it, then I think you kind of reached another level. It doesn't necessarily have anything to do with the art side of it, but you know what I mean. You kind of gain something extra in your career that you didn't have before that you can take and use to build further on.
Yeah, I tend to think of things in like almost in the video game type of way, where you know throughout your career, throughout your life, you're kind of leveling up, and you level up different stats at different times. So something that ends up a whole series of tiny little aha moments is when you finally figure something out and you understand it. I'm largely self-taught, and when it comes to Cinema 4D, and I tried rigging a character and I failed. And then a month later, I tried rigging a character and I failed. And the 6th time I tried, it clicked. I finally got it. And now I could start to make characters. And there's still challenges. I didn't understand everything. But now I got that part, and I felt like that little part leveled up, and I knew I could operate that level. And every time you get to focus on something, study it, practice, like, you know, click every single button involved in it, you're like, okay, now I get that I've leveled up. And you can get, there's a lot of satisfaction with not having completed something, but knowing in the future you will be able to complete these things. Like building up that potential is the thing that that is just so satisfying and keeps you coming back. Like, you will never run out of those in Cinema 4D. Like, you're like, well, I figured that part out. Time to start learning texturing. Okay, well, I got some UVs going a little bit, but let's go shift over to modeling. You'll never run out. By the time you get to the end of maybe every big category of 3D, you can loop around to the beginning and start learning brand new things again from scratch.
I haven't gotten there yet at all. I feel
Just getting started.
Yeah, this is coming from a person that's just getting started. Yes, a lot of people like me feel like that, where we just need to keep making more content. But I feel like the closest thing I did feel was when I started getting a lot better with my lighting and my rendering. I think that's when I started feeling, okay, I'm getting a little there. But yeah, a lot of students I talk to at my old college, they're all sort of feeling the pressure of, well, now I see graduates going through, now it's my turn, and it scares them a lot. So I think that we're being young, you don't feel it yet. And I think people will feel it later on in the future.
Awesome.
I just wanted to add that I saw myself getting good when I started doing whatever I wanted to. Instead of trying to find out the things that maybe a potential agency might want to hire me for, I kind of just threw all that out the window and just told myself I was just going to do what I wanted. Because I wasn't going to sit in front of my computer and just like tinker away on something crappy that I had no connection towards or anything like that. I think, which is part of the reason I became a specialist too, because I wanted people to hire me for the look and for the style that I have, because every client that's coming to me, I know I can deliver something better than what I did last time and keep growing upon my own look and style and stuff like that.
Awesome. Well, that kind of builds on, and I think you mentioned it, but I would love to hear from the rest of the panel, or we can start off on the far right and work our way back there. And so, Sean, we'll start with you again, and the question is, what is it that you feel sets yourself apart in the industry? It could be professionally or artistically. Like, what is it when someone's working with you that you feel sets yourself apart?
I mean, I think one thing is like to just show that you're excited about the work and to never stop learning. I think that's a lot of it is, especially like when you're doing freelance work at all, you're basically like selling yourself. And if you show up to meetings and you're not excited about that, I think like that's a big part of it. If we spend so much time behind the computer and that sort of thing, you have to be an outgoing, okay to be around person and excited about that. And you have to show that whatever client you're working with, you're going to bring that excitement to their project. You can't just be like, here's your boards, and tell me what you think. You have to be like enthusiastic about the work, and you have to be willing to like bring that level of excitement to their problems, and also like be able to explain your decisions and back that up and justify that and have those conversations, and just be willing to like along the whole way feel like they know that they went the right route with this project and hired the right person. Because if it's like a freelance project, it might be someone that you knew from like a different client and they're at a new place and they're going to bat for you, and their ass might be on the line too. So just being able to prove you can execute on time, on budget, time and time again is really like what clients end up mattering and what clients end up caring about and what matters. And you can show off like this shiny still frames, that stuff like this.
What was the question again? Because I'm like trying to think of something. No.
So the question is, what is it that sets you apart in the industry? So Sean mentioned as far as his excitement and the energy of working with a client.
Right.
It's like one of the big things that they feel one-on-one.
Sure. I think what sets me apart is I'm old. That's one thing. I mean, the other, I tend to, when I was in production, I was a creative director, so my best work was bringing up really good artists and figuring out ways to empower them and get out of their way and let them do their thing. So I think that my legacy is not really in any of the images or plugins or assets or anything that I make. It's in the work of the people that I helped bring up. I'm lucky enough now, I hope, to take some of that knowledge and some of that skill, instead of applying it in a small studio environment, but applying it to all of you with tutorials and training and things that I do with Grayscale Gorilla. So yeah, I think that's kind of what sets me apart.
I think one of the things that people have said that they liked that set me apart was I just have sort of like an optimistic attitude about everything, and I try to sort of keep like a level head and try to at least see the best in everything. And I feel like that's like a good attitude that people have enjoyed and clients have commented before. Sort of like what Sean said, where it's like you are able to deliver on time and you're really chill about it, and just be cool, like what people said. Like I just think it's important to sort of stay chill, like even if like the worst is beating down upon you, just sort of like stay chill and just understand that it's not the end of the world, and sort of you don't necessarily have to have a Zen-like attitude about it, but I think it's really helpful to detach yourself from it sometimes and just sort of feel like you can roll with it, and I think that's something that's about me that sets me apart. Yay.
Cool. I don't know if anything really sets me apart that much, but
Just another cog in the wheel.
Exactly. I know.
But I do. I am pretty hung up on details sometimes, but I'm very stubborn, and I tend to, but stubborn I like to call persistent. I put work in front of, I prioritize work a lot more than I probably should. So there are a lot of fun events and trips that I haven't taken because I was working nights and weekends at the studio. It's just, I think it's the passion, and like you said, it's just like pushing people to do their best work, and really, I feel like I'm honest with my feedback straight up. Don't waste any time, and don't waste their time or my time, and I feel like that has results. I try to do it in a kind way and more inspiring, I guess. So.
For me, I guess what makes me stand out a lot is I come up with a lot of big, grandiose ideas a lot of the time, and I sometimes write them down in my notebook. Sometimes I have like 50 things to write down or 20, but I always write them down. And I guess what stands out for me is that I'm able to take at least one of those 50 or 20, and I say, well, let's break it down to the bare bones, and let's see if I can keep adding on. Another good thing, I guess, about me is that I'm young and I'm still very fresh into this industry, so I have a lot of very new or different perspectives that I could be sharing, or I could be, showing off more or less. But I think those are very big two pieces of me that I think stand out.
For me, I've definitely carved out a niche in the very, very technical side of Cinema 4D. That's where I have always put all of my focus. I'm actually terrible at visualizing things, so I just dive in and try and understand every single button. And Cinema 4D just was such an easy thing to glom onto there for like infinite potential. And then after I focused more and more and more on the technical, I eventually found out working at my first full-time job doing 3D that I was able to, I had a very repetitive job, and I started building espresso tools for myself, and the tools made it so I could do my job even faster, and I got to have more free time to make more tools. And luckily Reddit didn't exist back then, so I just kept on playing with Cinema 4D all the time. And I eventually found out that my favorite thing to do was to make tools, to make things that have this unlimited potential that I can, I can't make a final project terribly well. I can make a tool for someone else to start making incredible projects, and if I can make a tool that a bunch of people can use, and that opens up so many possibilities that for something I couldn't have made, but now I've enabled them to make something that they couldn't have made otherwise. So that's hopefully the niche I've carved out. And I just love learning and then teaching Cinema 4D and sharing my enthusiasm for all of the amazing features that get added all of the time.
I think one thing special that I bring to the table would just be bringing a pleasant experience to like every single one of my clients. And I think that comes from the mantra of working on your business, not in it. Building systems to allow yourself to be more effective in your day-to-day business allows you to be more effective in the art side of it, in dealing with your clients and their issues and their needs. If you can build systems in your business to be able to take care of anything that comes up day to day, and not allow it to take up too much of your time that you should be spending on the project or developing things for your client. It just gives you that extra time to really do what you got into this business to do, you know.
Awesome. I'll move the mic all the way back to the right, and we'll go, this will be my closing question, then we'll open it up to the audience. And that is, how do you define success artistically? When you're working on a project, when do you feel successful? Is it just when the client says so, or in your own space? What is success to you?
Yeah, I mean, with freelance work and client work, the success would be like, you got paid. I would say,
done.
Like, ship it. You did that. I think there's kind of a different arm of it, and that's why I think the idea of like personal projects came up. I think that's always good to balance. Of like, I'll have my client projects where the goal is to like complete the client work on time, or like talk about where the budgets are, and like that's the goal of my freelance work, is to make the client happy, feel like I brought my skill set to the table, and could build that into a business to like support a family. That's really like the big part of freelance work. But I also do like personal work where one of the things I do like every year is whenever the new version of Cinema 4D will be coming out, I'll like look at the list of new features and be like, okay, my goal of this like still or animation is like, I gotta learn this new fracture feature. I gotta learn like the thin film shader, and I'll set that up of like, I'm gonna come up with a project that success is defined by like when I feel like I am comfortable enough with this that I could then talk about it to other people. So I feel like it's kind of you can go in a lot of different directions. We're talking about like freelance work, agency work, personal work, but it's good to have different levels of success depending like what you do. If your goal is to make money out of the work, or just make something pretty that you can put on the internet and you feel like you learned something.
Yeah, I think success is if I nailed the brief and I like it. I think that like that to me is like when I was doing mostly production work, it was always try to hit the brief, try to basically tackle everything that the client wants, get everything in there, but ultimately you're trying to plus it, you're trying to bring something more to the table to where you yourself like it. So that's really what I'm always trying to do, is just make myself happy with my work. But that's just, wow, I think it's a breakthrough right here. My wife's going to be like, you got it exactly right.
Happiness. Yeah. No, I totally think, I agree that I feel like success as an artist can be determined by the work that you do commercially versus personally. And, commercially it is successful to get it done on time, in budget and all those kinds of things. There's always that phrase that it's like, done is better than perfect, and making sure that you just get the work finished is I think, and building that habit is successful in itself. But on the personal side, it's, I guess, sort of similar, where like, you can keep tweaking a piece that you're working on as much as you want. I know that they always say like, what is it? A piece of art is never finished, that kind of thing. There's always something you have to change. And it's like when you've reached that sort of diminishing return where like, the things that you're tweaking are just so tiny that you're kind of it's acceptable to say like, I'm done. That's like, I think, a point of success when you're like, all right, like I am okay saying like, like it is finished, And I think that's important. In terms of like career success, I don't know. I think it's important to focus more like what we were talking about, the happiness that the art brings you, and not necessarily focus outwardly on it, because I feel like that can sometimes poison the passion that you have for the art that you're making. So just focusing on doing what makes you happy and producing work that makes you happy is that's success to me.
Yeah, it's very similar to what's been said. I think it's a mix of obviously us being happy with the work, the client being happy with the work, coming in on budget with a profit is important, and most importantly that you learn something from it. So yeah, happy clients will keep coming back. You'll keep doing more of that work. Yeah, so. I think that's pretty much sums it up for me. Like if I'm happy with it, it's most important. It's in that order. Me, client, budget, and learning. So.
I would say for me, what counts as a successful piece would be when I don't have to tweak it anymore, when I can't find anything else to tweak after maybe like 15 times looking it over and just keep saying, okay, this. I think finally for me, success would be not having to tweak it anymore. You're finally done with fixing. And then also, of course, if your client's happy, I think that is number one. But I think number two is especially you as an artist.
I think it's important to always keep in mind that you shouldn't treat success as something that's on the horizon or something that's in the future. It's really important to kind of find happiness and satisfaction in the moment with what you're actively doing. There's going to be highs and lows. It's going to change day to day, but being happy with what you accomplished in any given day is I think where you're going to find real happiness. Having said that, like I really feel success when I'm in a little different space with like education and building tools, but when we're at NAB or SIGGRAPH or any kind of event and somebody comes up and says that they got a job because of a tutorial that I made, then I mean that is just incredible satisfaction. And almost even more so is somebody saying I used a tool that you created and it saved my butt on this job and the client's happy, and it's like, okay, it almost doesn't get better than that. I made this tool to help people and it's helping people. So like, and then somebody comes up and says, hey, I have a new feature. I'm like, yes, I get to add something and make it better. It's pure satisfaction. So.
For me, it would be freedom. Part of the reason I went freelance was just to gain access to a little bit more freedom and kind of have a little more control over the way that I take my career. Having the ability to be agile in the types of decisions and the directions that I take, it always turns out better for me, and I'm able to kind of live the life that I choose, really, and without anybody saying any different.
Awesome. So I'm going to go ahead and open it up to the floor a little bit for some questions. And at the same time, I'm going to try and pull up some of the videos that you sent me, Sean, because that was still on the drive. But do we have any questions from the audience for our panel? Any individual or general thing you guys want to know once we have somebody? Let's start back there. I know you've been waiting.
I just have a question for all you guys. You all brought up real-time rendering. Have you guys, it's kind of a two-part, how often do you have clients that should bring it up and they want to have you possibly do that? And two, have any guys that should use Notch to do it?
So the question is real-time rendering, or is anyone working with that in their workflow? And have you used Notch? Okay. And are you guys familiar with Notch?
I don't even know what it is.
Yeah.
I've never used it, but I have friends who
Okay, so a lot of no on Notch, and then real-time. Are you guys seeing any demands for real-time content, Unreal? In Montreal, somebody was specifically asking for that. And they were a recruiter. So I know that's something that the industry is demanding, but I think you guys a lot of feature, a lot of commercial work. What are you guys seeing?
Yeah, I actually have a meeting with Unreal in October, and I plan on learning as much as I can about that platform. But yeah, I agree. I think it's going to be a huge part of everybody's future in some way, shape, or form. But I don't have any specific answer.
Sorry.
I haven't used Notch either, and real-time stuff looks super cool. But I don't know if we've ever had a client specifically ask about that, or if I've ever had a client specifically ask about that, since a lot of it is usually like just completing the brief or completing the design that they'd like, and devil may care what kind of tools you're using behind the scenes. So I feel like the push for real-time is usually coming from the artist side or from the studio side, just because it enables us to have more time to iterate and more freedom to work on the project.
Yeah, if I'm not mistaken, is mostly used for experiential type work, yeah, so that's why it needs to be real time. But yeah, I've never used it either.
Another question? I saw a couple hands right here in the front.
Right, so I'm kind of just starting to dip my toe into Cinema 4D, and when I was starting with After Effects, I had a creative director be like, learn kinetic typography because you're always going to use that. And right now I'm just trying to grab things I think is cool and learn them. So my question is, as someone starting out, what is maybe an area that could always be used? Somewhere I should maybe look at to, if I build here, this would be a good building block to take.
So the question, a good foundation to have, what tool set or,
I mean, this is something that will stay with you for the future. I think broader concepts and principles of design are never going to go away. So definitely typography is a great one. I mean, you go into composition, contrast, rhythm, all of the design principles that you can learn more about and exercise. And I think those are foundations that you'll use for the rest of your career.
Let's do it together. Okay. We both think.
We almost had something going there, dude. I think we're on the same page, you and I. I would say that if you're coming from After Effects, I assume you're doing animation, right? So I think that animation is a perfect thing to sort of start as a jumping off point in cinema. You could start to use some of the same principles of animation that you learned in After Effects and bring those directly into cinema and really build off of that, because it's going to allow you to do, with 3D, you're going to do a hell of a lot more interesting dimensional stuff than you would in After Effects. And the principles are the same, F-curves, all that stuff is pretty much the same. So I think starting there and then sort of building off of that and then starting to tackle lighting, starting to tackle surfacing, I think that's kind of a good trajectory. Modeling is something that you definitely need to learn, but it's not a day one thing. I think especially if you're coming in from an After Effects background, you could probably get away with very minimal modeling until you're ready for that. And then definitely you should, because it's a foundational skill that I think everybody should have. But yeah.
I would say the biggest jump from like 2D animation, where you might be learning like traditional animation principles, which what was said earlier about like typography. I think those broader subjects are what to really think about. If you're doing After Effects animation, you're not only doing like F curves and that sort of stuff. You know what to do with that with traditional animation techniques like squash and stretch and anticipation. The same thing applies to 3D. For me, at least, like when I went back to grad school and studied like film and lighting and cameras and actually understood like how a camera worked and what an f-stop means and what depth of field is. And same thing with like lighting, actually going on sets and hanging up lights, understanding what like 3-point lighting is. That was when the light bulb went off to me of like how to apply that to 3D. And I feel like that was still the most valuable experience I have that I apply to Cinema 4D every day, but it's really those concepts of, film lighting techniques that are agnostic to like the tools.
Yeah, I would definitely piggyback off what Sean's saying. If you went back and did anything in the real world, so your f-stops and all that, that's stuff that I still look at that I'm like, oh wow, composition, color, timing, rhythm, all that's there. But if you don't know the basics of setting up, a real world scene, you're gonna have a really hard time as you move forward. If you take a look at everyone's projects that I've been showing, from colors to composition to each one of these, they each have things that you would need to know, like depth of field, the f-stop, all that stuff is there. So you're going to see that again and again across all projects, but it's all based on real world values that are just being translated. So I think definitely going back to the traditional class, like Sean said, would be a big deal. Is there one here in the front?
When I'm making stuff, there's always an aha moment. I'm like, oh, okay, this is what this is. This is how the software works. Yeah. I'm just wondering if you guys had any aha moments in your career or in cinema or design and all that, like stuff stick out to you guys.
Is there a moment, so the question is there a moment that was an aha when working with a tool or just on a project that really stand out to you?
Yeah, right, every day, he says. Yeah, for me, it was, I was working in a post house here in Chicago, Optimus. Anybody from Optimus out there? No? Okay, well, forget that, I said that. I was the only 3D guy there, and I was busting my ass trying to get this shot done, and I was new, and I was nervous, and I got it done, and I was playing it back in the Flame Suite. This is back when Flame Suites were, the place to, well, forget it. And so, I'm nervous. I have to show my boss that the client is there. I'm going to show my render. I get in there, and there's a problem with the render. There's like, I forget, like a texture was off or something was off, and some mistake. And I'm freaking out. I'm like, oh my God, I'm going to be fired. I just started this job. And my boss, the flame operator, he was also in charge of the graphics department. He was like, oh, wait, that's a problem? Oh, I got it. I'll take care of it for you. And I'm like, what? And he just He just comped it out. He just fixed it right there in Flame, just comped it. And I'm like, wait, I don't have to go re-render? He's like, no, it's compositing, dude. What the hell? I'm like, come on. And I was like, holy shit, like this is mine. You know, I was just completely blown away that I didn't have to do everything all over again. So it's funny, like the question is like, that aha moment for me wasn't even 3D. It was just knowing that I could not have to go back and re-render 3D. And compositing, once I learned how to composite, my 3D work got 10 million times better. And so everybody should learn compositing. So there you
go. My aha moment? Let's see. Definitely, well, I was going to say the compositing comment was really good because there's so much that you can do after you've rendered to plus the work that you've done coming out of the renderer that it's like absurd. You know, that we were working on something recently where, you know, it was like a glowing lava, not that particular project that was up there, but it was something else where we had to add like glow and lights and flares and fire and everything. And when you like backed it all up and went back to the original render, it looked like, not pathetic, but it was like you were like, oh yeah. And then you turn it all back on and it would be all amazing and you'd be like, yeah, that's right, you know. And so it was all in comp and that kind of thing. So yeah, that's like the aha moment too, is where you're like, I don't have to go back. Like it doesn't all have to be in one render, you know.
One pass.
Yeah, I don't know if I have too many aha moments or not enough. So I'm gonna pass this one.
I would have to say, I guess my biggest aha moment was figuring out rendering hair, and also just fixing hair, because Pixar always had the best characters with the best hair. So I kind of just fell in love with that. So I guess I liked being a virtual groomer. So I guess that was my biggest aha moment.
Early on, I was very, very focused in 3D of making everything as real as possible. If there was going to be a render of a classroom and you're looking at the teacher's desk, even though we're just seeing it from the back, I was like, well, I have to model the drawers. The drawers have to be able to open. I got to be able to put, because I didn't want to fake it. And then there was a day where I was like, wait a minute, this is 3D. It's already all fake. I don't have to do this all as real as possible. I think it's just tying into like, I always like the potential, so maybe I could use this desk again in the future, but I was eating up so much time trying to build everything as real as possible that it was silly, and getting over that sped things up enormously. And then, you know, a million little aha moments every single day. Just like I said, like playing and tinkering and learn every time you know why this behaves the way it does. It's like, okay, cool, put that in the toolbox and now I get it.
So I guess my aha moment would be studying film techniques and lighting, I think. That's at least what brought my work up a little, another notch. And also, I started developing my own look after kind of developing my skills in that area. Study film theory and story and cinematic techniques and lighting techniques is gonna like put you way over the curve in the 3D world. Yeah, that's it.
Cool. Any other questions from the audience? In the back.
Yeah, so, I mean, I guess related to these a little bit, since you were talking about fundamental concepts, but for people that teach C4D and people that have learned C4D, what was the gateway to the gateway drug? So, like, what was the one thing that as soon as you figured it out, you really felt great about working with the tool?
So that's a question about transitioning into cinema for the first time? Yeah. So, okay, so was there a moment that you did something in cinema? Was there a tool or a feature or something that once you executed that, then you're like, all right, I'm in?
Yeah, so the first time I found out about cinema and the first time that I decided that I was going to do this for a living, I found Grayscale. And I did that one tutorial where Nick was doing that flat screen TV, and I think he had like a Christmas background. He was basically showing you how to composite like a video on like a 3D TV. But yeah, so once I went through that tutorial and kind of understood how in depth this could be and the possibilities, and I was like, okay, I'm just gonna like take it and run with it and see what can happen.
Yeah, coming out from more of an education side, I've taught for many years an Introduction to Cinema 4D class. I haven't in a while, but I got to see what people actually responded to. And what I love doing is on the very first day of class is kind of giving them the tiniest little taste of everything, and from start to finish, like modeling, and it's the simplest thing, is like model a little airplane or spaceship, run it along a spline, like a simple animation, a simple material, and at the very end, render it out so you have like a quick time to bring home. It's like, okay, you got something to bring home and show somebody. And at that point, it's like for every day of class, we're going to be doing the same thing again. We're just going to be adding onto it and complicating it and adding more. But just, it's such a big piece of software. It can be intimidating, and being able to get this final end result right away over the course of like an hour or two, I think is really satisfying and can hook people right away.
Anyone else? That aha moment that got you in?
More aha?
More aha?
Oh, I have an aha moment. The first aha moment in this industry. Do you guys remember the first time you understood the concept of keyframes? Yeah. That was a huge aha. I remember that one. It must have been big. Aha. But yeah, with cinema, it was, I think what impressed me the most was like when I was able to just create clones on clones, and just things started getting really complex and rendered so fast. And I was like, oh wow, you can really create something spectacular in 5 minutes. So, cool.
I think going from like After Effects to other 3D packages and then getting into Cinema 4D, when you can figure out how to quickly make 3D text, animate it, make a 3D logo like 10 years ago or so, that was kind of the thing for me. It was like, why is this so hard if I just have an After Effects animation and I want to learn how to put like one 3D thing in it, or make like the logo but make it actually have like lights and shadows. Learning how you could do that in Cinema 4D and how it is, in my opinion, like so much easier than like a lot of the other 3D packages. I feel like that's like half of what people going from After Effects to a 3D package are trying to start off doing, and then from there you can just like learn a lot more and build on that. But just getting off the ground is so much more accessible to then some of the other 3D packages where it's like you don't even know what to do.
That was going to be my next question. What is your favorite tool? So one of your favorite tools or things in cinema? Or just in the world. In the entire world.
The hammer.
The hammer. No, just.
The thing that got me the most excited the last few years was like when the like Voronoi fracture came straight into Cinema 4D and like what you could do with it. I feel like in VFX work that was always like a complicated process to like, I have this object, I want to break it into pieces, then I want it to shatter. Like it was always like, get this plugin or like this extra thing, and that being built in was, in the last few years, the tool in Cinema 4D I was the most excited about from the technical side of it. Just like was shown earlier, like you take a sphere and then you just put this on and then you turn up the pieces and then that's it, and you can just animate it.
Yeah, for me it's probably Substance Designer, Redshift, and Arnold. Probably my 3 favorite tools.
I'm a big fan of the script log in Cinema that will pipe out like whatever Python command that is equivalent to what you've done, because it lets you copy and paste and create little buttons that automate like a ton of work that you have to do. Like let's say for every object in the scene, you have to select like the top facing face and extrude it a certain way or whatever. It's really nice to be able to just like set that up in a button and then do that like 1,000 times and be like, all right, I'm done. And then like lay down and take a nap.
Anybody using the script log? One person beside you. Okay. More tutorials on that, Noseman. We need more tutorials on this.
I like the extrude generator, and I like how fracturing it and
matrix extrude.
Yeah, no,
the
just
generator.
Extrusion. Right?
Oh, just extrude. Okay.
Yeah, extrude. It's the simplest one, but it takes my Illustrator splines and makes 3D things. Okay, and then but recently I combined that with the fracture, Voronoi fracture, and actually what Noseman was showing earlier today with the matrix object plugged into it, and that was super helpful. Like I can actually break these things exactly with the shapes that I want. You know, in this case, was just wanted a bunch of little squares, and it broke like exactly how I wanted, and it's kind of cool.
I guess my favorite tool would have to be Spline and Arnold Render. I really like Arnold Render and Spline a lot.
So rendering splines with Arnold? Is that just Spline?
No, splines, because I can make anything with a spline, and I can just, it's so accessible and so flexible to use. And then just Arnold, because I'm so used to Arnold Render to this point where it's like, you know what, I'm going to my guy.
Yeah, I mean, obviously we're all kind of in the realm of Cinema 4D. I would do my taxes in Cinema 4D if I could figure out a way. Like when I do presentations, I don't use PowerPoint. I just open a series of scene files and close them one after another to have it power through. But honestly, within Cinema, it was the addition and combination of the MoGraph tool suite and Dynamics. Once you could combine those two. Like if you're going to do modeling, you're going to use a whole bunch of MoGraph tools. If you're going to do animation, you're going to use a whole bunch of MoGraph tools. You want to make procedural animation, you're going to use MoGraph tools. That's the ability to clone things. Like I almost never use Illustrator because I can use all these cloning tools to generate my splines parametrically in Cinema and then export them out as a vector. And now I can very non-destructively create patterns and loops and have so much control over that. So just the MoGraph suite in general was a game changer. I also think it was when Cinema 4D just like completely took off. Nobody else could do anything like that. So as an industry, that's where Cinema 4D like found a huge niche and really expanded the motion graphics market. So
I would say the voxel modeling is a huge one for me now, as I'm not like a modeling guy. And I was basically over. I was kind of pissed off of modeling. I didn't think I was going to do it anymore, but this basically made me a professional modeler just with one tool, and I'm stoked about that. So that's pretty exciting.
Any other questions from the audience? Start here and work on.
Yeah. What are maybe some of your more memorable technical challenges? And then just from a high level, what was the breakthrough or the turning point in being able to do that thing?
So one of my biggest challenges in my career so far, at least for projects, this last summer I worked with EA for the new NHL game that's coming out, I think this month. And they put me in charge of developing the whole perk system in the game. So that was like the biggest project I've ever been on in my life. And I had to control all these different elements and assets and things like that. And it was just like a one-man band. So it was a rather humongous project for just me. And yeah, so just making sure that I had all my ducks in a row and was very adamant about my time and my strategy going through and making sure that everything was going to work out good because I wanted to keep them as a client.
I think the biggest challenge for me was really getting into any kind of programming. Specifically, I'm pretty decent in Python, and I learned that through Cinema 4D. And once again, that was something where I tried and tried again and again and again and again until finally it sort of clicked. Although I do have a recommendation: if anybody does want to start tinkering programming, a great way to do that is to use Unity, because it's a video game engine and you get instant feedback whenever you're doing anything successful. And Unity plays really well with Cinema 4D. It opens Cinema 4D files natively. So just that instant satisfaction and feedback, it'll teach you the logic of programming, which could then be applied to any of the languages.
What was the question again? Oh, okay. Most challenging, lip syncing, especially with music. I think I told someone this earlier. That was the biggest challenge. I'm really into metal, and so I really wanted to lip sync characters to metal music. And so once I finally figured that out, I used blend, kind of like blend shapes, where you just morph the mouth with it. Especially in Cinema 4D, that's like the really. It was really hard for me to sync it with the music, but once I figured it out, it was a really good feeling.
Cool. The mandalas in Doctor Strange, I think they've been kind of rotating around. That was that was ginormous. We had clones, the mandalas were themselves made out of clones, and then we had clones of the mandalas to create an environment, and everything just became so massive. And we ended up coming up with an XREF workflow for it. So, we would only have proxy geometry, even though it was very, very heavy. So, but yeah, that was mine. It was a nightmare.
Duarte's personal nightmare.
One of the hardest recent technical challenges was from the project that is on the contact card. It's like for a football that has to have all the dots on the football randomly arranged that then become straight, that then get replaced by random letters, and then get replaced by data. And so it was like, before fields were a thing, that would have been a ton of difficulty linking up all the fall-offs and their positions and everything. But being able to use the fields and like the random fields and being able to scale all those things and then link the position of everything together to the same field made that so much easier. And it was just, yeah, it was like hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of these little tiny dots and making this sort of dynamic texture. And it was the heaviest MoGraph system I've ever worked with. But yeah, that was one where I didn't know if it was going to work. And then when it finally cached and everything looked okay, I was like, finally. So.
I think one of my most challenging technical hurdles was something I tackled with Chris actually when we were making Lightkit Pro 3 and trying to make a lighting plugin work across 3 different renderers simultaneously, giving four. See, what would I do without you, buddy? And that was a huge pain in the ass. And like we busted our ass for a long time trying to get consistency, and then also really tried to make it a tool that was easy for you to use and would give you very predictable results across different platforms. And yeah, I think we did a pretty good job.
I think the last few years, one of the things that's been like a big technical connection point for me is when Cinema 4D got more connected to After Effects, and then I tried to take that like from a Cinema 4D file and be like, okay, well, what if I could take that camera and like points on nulls and bring that in After Effects and connect what I already know about After Effects and connect that to like lights and then add optical flares or particles and After Effects to that. When I was able to get like all of that stuff to work and connect successfully, and like I feel like that, especially the last few years, that was something that's like new and not as simple with like other software. That was really like a technical breakthrough point for me when it actually all linked up together without having to like track or reanimate anything.
Yeah, that's a huge one. That's a huge one. We had one more question in the front.
Yeah, actually, and you kind of brushed on the first one a little bit with just curious how many of you know Python or some sort of programming language.
So I guess we'll just
barely any barely any.
By weight up of hands, how many of you actually know any Python or programming on stage?
A little bit.
1 1/2 and an inch. so yeah.
Other question is now is you deal with or projects kind of become bigger and you might have more of a gig economy where you're dealing with more freelancers and people that have to kind of integrate work together. Just what are your thoughts or advice on best practices for working with other people?
Name your shit.
So best practices for
Naming.
integrating as a team and working with multiple people from, I guess, all over, right? Yeah. I heard name your.
Yeah, name your shit is good. I think like having a good comprehensive folder structure that is not too complicated is really important. Obviously, naming your stuff, versioning up, always have versions and tracking versions. The render version should match your project name's versions. I think that's really important because then everybody knows exactly what project file that render came out of. Yeah, I think just communication, having a very good shot list that is accessible to everybody. There are several platforms that you can use. We are a small studio. We usually just use Google Sheets, but we do keep track of notes and which artist is on each shot. And in general, is just keeping it clean. Projects need to be follow a template that is accessible to everybody. Everybody knows exactly where to find assets and renders and all that. So,
anyone else have anything to add?
Covered it.
I think those are pretty good. You're naming your stuff, you're using layers. That's pretty good. I think we have time for one more question if we have it. Right here in the front.
Yeah, I feel like when we start as an artist, we have sort of like checkpoints or like milestones we want to do. So I want to create a Pixar movie, or I want to work on like Hollywood or like an Apple commercial or something like that. And like some of you on stage have done that, but you're still working. That's not necessarily the end point. So then you're like, all right, well, do I start my own company? Do I go into a creative director position? But then you're not so much doing the art itself. And then, some people are just super happy with creating the art. I don't need to climb any further. I just want to just create my art. So for the people that are on stage, what drives your career? Why do you keep doing the thing you want to do?
So the question is, what drives you? What if you've already accomplished the big movie titles? I mean, you guys worked on the MCU, and you've made my day. I'm like, I could pretty much die happy. I've seen the Infinity Gauntlet series. Thank you. But aside from that, what really drives you? What pushes you to that next level in creativity? Is that what you're looking for? What keeps you going besides having to pay rent and to keep the lights on? Keep the lights on.
I would definitely say, for me personally, like a big goal of mine would definitely be a character artist for Pixar. But let's just say like I'm 50 and I already did it. I think at the end of the day, and this is gonna sound kind of sad, I think at the end of the day, the only reason why I would keep making characters and keep making content for my characters is because at the end of the day, if I'm lonely, they're the only things that's gonna be there for me.
Nice.
So so that's why I would keep making characters.
Your true friends, they never leave you.
Like I said, I strive for a more of like a daily ambient like satisfaction rather than like these big giant goals. So like projects are fun. I constantly seek, it's always like, what's the cool next tool to work on? But it's just because I enjoy the act of working on this tool. I think when I was younger, it's like, oh, I want to work on like an animated TV show. That would be really cool. But even back then, I think I was more in the mind of like, I want to be part of the story team more than the animators. And I originally got into Cinema 4D as, well, I can start making those movies right now. And then there's like, wait, I actually just really, really love the technical side of this. So yeah, the day-to-day activity and enjoying that is the satisfaction. You'll never be unhappy if that's what you're aiming for. But I feel like if I had a very specific goal of like, oh, I got to go work at Blizzard, I don't know. Once you reach it, then it's like, well, what's next? I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, once you solve or complete one goal, you're always going to create a new one to like take up your time, because what else are you going to do with the rest of your life? I feel like I just want to be known as one of the best people in the industry, making awesome stuff and trying to innovate and do different things. I don't really have a definition for what that means really, but if I can get to that point to where I personally feel like I'm up there and I'm really like creating something special, then I feel like that's where I'd want to be.
All right, I actually asked this question to somebody when I was in film school who came to talk, and it was the producer of American Beauty, and he had just gotten the Oscar. And I was really curious, now that you've made it, you have this Oscar, I mean, what now? Do you start collecting them, or what? And it kind of caught him off guard, and just like it's got everybody here, I think. It is, because there's a sense of achievement, especially after you have such a big achievement, and it's something that you dream of probably since you're a child. But then like his response was, I'm already booked to do another one, and if you love what you're doing, you're just gonna keep doing it, I think. And if you ask me, I do want to retire, hopefully pretty soon. And when I say retiring, it doesn't mean by it doesn't mean that I will stop doing what I do. It just means that I will pick and choose and only work on the stuff that I really want to work and that is going to be meaningful and important to me. I also think that we're not in a position that you get to inspire other people to do it, and you'll help other people in their career. And if they look at you and you made it and you gave up, it's probably not very encouraging. So I think just keep going, and if it makes you happy, why stop it, right?
I had a real simple goal, actually. It was to never have to wear a suit. And I did it.
Way to go. Yeah, this is something that I've thought of a lot in my career, because I was always thought of I just want to keep making stuff, and I don't want to be the creative director person in charge and be separated from the making of the things. But I think that evolves over time, the further you get in your career and the more knowledge you learn. And so I think there's still a drive to make things, but for me it's been being able to be involved in the community and make tutorials and realize I know imposter syndrome came up earlier, and I feel me and probably all of us feel some of that, but I feel once you realize that you have knowledge that you can give back to other people, whether it's teaching, making tutorials, that's a way to still be making things and kind of just stay involved in the industry and grow that way.
Awesome. I'm gonna cut the questions there so we have some time to actually network. I want to thank all of our artists. Let's give a big round of applause to all of our artists for taking time. You can find more about cinema. You can find out more about us on Cineversity.com. Be on the lookout in your email in the next 2 weeks for a follow-up for how you get all those amazing gifts of software that are for attending, that you're going to get 3 months of cinema, 3 months of Redshift, a $100 coupon from Kitbash 3D. You got a month of Creative Cloud, so there's a bunch of giveaways that you're entitled to just for showing up. Definitely check out Noseman's tutorials on Cineversity, as well as Linda. So if you're looking to learn and dive deep, this is, some of the stuff that was talked about today as far as, keeping up with the tools. Sean makes a number of different tutorials as well, so you can definitely check out those. I think a lot of people actually participate in them. And if they haven't done tutorials, they've done live presentations like this on Cineversity and on C4D Live, which is an archive of all the live shows over the last, I guess, decade now. I've been doing it and producing the shows. So I want to thank you guys all for being here. So thank you. This is my hometown, so I really love coming back here and getting some pizza, hanging out with the crew. So I wanted to say thank you, Chicago. I'll be off to Seattle tomorrow. Anybody else you know in any of these cities, please invite them out. We'd love to socialize. And we're going to have about an hour in the foyer, I guess, maybe? The hall? Foyer. Thank you. Foyer. So we're going to have that entrance area, so we'll be able to socialize and network here for another hour. And please definitely take the time to meet at least 2 new people here. It's so worth it. So thank you, everybody, and thank you to our sponsors. And let's give everybody just another round of applause and call it a day.
MoGraph.com, an online resource for motion graphic artists. Start your week with the MoGraph Podcast. Industry news, interviews with your favorite artists, and terrible humor. Watch live shows and interviews from MoGraph events like NAB, SIGGRAPH, Half-Res, and local meetups. Our MoGraph Talks feature live demos and motivation from artists all around the world.
Sometimes you gotta make stuff that you're not gonna put on your reel, and I'm not here to judge.
What if Rick and Morty show up for the countdown at midnight? That's where I peaked in life, in my career.
We gotta stop this thing, Rick! It's gonna kill us all!
Hear from the people that create your software, design your render engines, and artists that are changing the face of modern motion graphics.
You get that render done. Yeah, you better frame what?
MoGraph tutorials and online classes will teach you about Cinema 4D, After Effects, as well as other popular software and render engines.
Throw in the HDR Studio, take the render settings, pick the HDR, put in a reflection, and gorgeous.
Branch into new software. Learn time-saving tips, techniques, workflows, and lessons that'll keep you up to date in the world of motion design.
Oh, brother, those are some of my favorite elves.
I love projects that scare me. When our art director comes to us and asks for something that I had never done before, man, it gets me pumped.
Join the conversation in our live sessions. Check out our plugins or join the hundreds of daily active users in our Slack channel for technical help, advice, contests, or just to joke around.
Real nice banana.
Ah, that's so funny. All right. I'm going to live forever.
Subscribe today and get the latest updates on our YouTube and other social media channels.
Take all your dreams and just do it!
We don't care how you get here, folks. Just get here.
Subscribe to MoGraph.com.